All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get this started. Welcome to From Connection to Inspection, Sales Strategies for Home Inspectors. My name is Olivia. I work on our marketing team here at Spectora, and thank you everyone for coming. We're really excited about this webinar, and most of the time you'll be with Stefan. He is one of our account managers at Spectora. If you know him, you know he is the best guy around, and he is also an expert on all things sales. So I'm really excited to have him get in and unpack how home inspectors can be successful salespeople. And with that, I'll just give a brief walkthrough of what the two of us are going to cover today. So if you want to get into the next slide, Stefan, that would be awesome. All right, so today's agenda, first of all, we're going to talk about reframing sales and conquering a bit of the discomfort that comes with being a salesperson, comes with selling and self-promotion. And then we're also going to reframe sales a bit as relationship building and why relationship building is really one of the most important ways that you can sell your services and sell your business. And then when I pass it over to Stefan, we're going to break down what even is sales and how do you sell, really starting at the basics, go over some truths and lies for sales, talk about how home inspectors can actually build a framework for success. So it's not that you're just going out there willy-nilly, you're actually having a plan and an approach. We're going to walk through some common scenarios you might encounter when you are marketing yourself and selling your business. And then we're going to have some takeaways and action items so that after this webinar, y'all can actually go ahead and get started. And then lastly, we're going to talk about something that's really important, which is how you can actually sell when you're not there, when you're not actually on the phone or face-to-face with someone. And then as always with all of our webinars, we're going to leave a couple moments at the end for Q&A. So as you go through, think of any questions. If you want to, at the bottom of your screen, you should see a little tab that says Q&A. That's where you can put all of your questions. So we ask that you put questions there in the Q&A box, and then we will get to them at the end of the webinar. If you're having technical difficulties or anything else, feel free to go ahead and put that in the chat. There are also a few poll questions that we will ask throughout the course of this webinar. You can put your answers to those in the chat as well. So that said, let's jump right into it. So as I said, we got a couple poll questions and we're going to start off with one. And the first one is, who here is uncomfortable selling? And if you all just want to write into the chat with a quick yes, thumbs up, whatever, if that is the case, let us know. All right, already I am seeing a ton of people saying yes, definitely yes, thumbs up. Got a couple no's in there, which is good as well. And so we'll talk about it, whether you're comfortable selling yet or whether being a salesperson makes you feel really uncomfortable. This webinar will help you. So then for our next question, and this is pretty similar, but who here has a negative perception of sales? When you think of a salesperson, do you think of that as someone who's sleazy or anything like that? All right, I am also seeing some answers here. Great. Yeah, some raised hands. Yep. So, okay. With that, we can go ahead and go to the next slide. But I think you all are hitting on something that we all feel, and it's that self-promotion can be really uncomfortable. And especially if you're new to it, a lot of home inspectors, we've realized, come from a place of being like these excellent technicians and these excellent sources of technical knowledge about everything about the home. You know, you've been through your training, your CE, wherever you are in your home inspection journey, you're an expert in that sense. But we've noticed that a lot of home inspectors don't feel comfortable really putting themselves out there and sometimes can struggle with articulating the value of a home inspector to real estate agents and actually selling themselves and building these partnerships. So it can feel a lot like, as this Michael Scott Gibbs says, you know exactly what to do, but in much more real sense, you actually have no idea what you're doing when it comes to sales. And that's okay. Additionally, like many people, you don't want to come off as the salesman. You want to come off as genuine. So we're really excited to unpack how you can do that and how you can go beyond and make it sales and selling your business and your services feel like something that's comfortable, that's natural, that's organic, and not something like you're just, you know, putting yourself out there in a way that you don't feel comfortable with. Great. And yeah, just to cover this super quickly, like putting on your salesperson hat is really necessary because the combination of marketing and sales, those are really your two pillars of your customer acquisition strategy. So let's think about this from start to finish. If you're getting in touch or trying to meet a new agent or get new clients, you're probably going to start with your marketing, which is building up your website, putting energy into social media. However, you're working to get yourself on the radar of new agents or new clients, right? And then the second step to that I feel, at least we at Spectora, this is our first webinar on this, so we're really excited to unpack that. But once you're in the door, once you have put in the very first step to forming that relationship, how do you build it into something that lasts? How do you turn that agent that landed on your website or who you went to and met at an open house or however you're acquiring new agents, social media? How do you turn that into an agent who's going to use you as their primary inspector, at the very least add you to their rotation? So all this to say, this is just something that is really important and something that all inspectors need to build their muscles in. All right, and the really important thing and the great thing that we have is that if you believe in your company, you can sell. And if you believe in what you do and the services you offer, you will be able to sell that to someone else. Confidence is a huge part of that. So what I want everyone to do, and just take a moment to think about now, but really after the webinar, think through these in depth, maybe even write them down if you can. We'll actually be sending out a sheet with some of these questions and more that you can all fill out. But go through these and find an answer that you can talk about when you are in touch with an agent or a client. So first of all, what's something you are confident you can do at the highest level? And right off the bat, I do want to say this should go beyond, just giving a thorough inspection. There should be something else that you can do at the highest level, whether it's your customer service or your communication with a client or something that is really, you believe in your market, you are the best at. Second are, what problems do you know you can solve for a realtor? And by that, and Stefan's going to get much more into this later, but like realtors have pain points and solving those pain points is going to be a big part of getting in the door. So do you get an inspection report back really fast? Are you a great communicator of defects? Can you communicate what's wrong with the house without completely overwhelming the buyer? Those are problems that a lot of realtors probably have that you can solve. So answer that. And then these last two are going to be relatively similar to the first two, but slightly different and important to answer as well. What makes you or your company specifically the best option for a home buyer? And then what sets you apart from other inspectors? So those are your unique value propositions. And having the answers to these questions are the fundamentals to your elevator pitch. They are the fundamentals that you should know whenever you are making contact and starting to build a relationship with an agent or with a client. And then lastly, I just want to tell a quick story before I pass this over to Stefan. And this is going to really illustrate why sales doesn't have to be just going and shouting into the void about why your company is the best, like we just said. So a year ago, actually, Stefan and I both were at a conference in North Carolina. And we met Sarah Wilson, who does marketing for a home inspection company. And I was asking her about her success with social media. And she said the way they've met some of their top agents is she would literally just message real estate agents, ask them about the market, ask them about the business, because she was new to the world of home inspection and she was just commenting on their posts, asking them about things that didn't even have anything to do with the home inspection. And some of those agents weren't at the time looking for a new home inspector, but by building that relationship, by just being a friendly and curious person, she was able to get some of the top agents in her market working with her and her husband's home inspection company. And so the moral of that is that sales and relationship building doesn't have to be and really shouldn't be all about you. So asking questions, letting agents tell you actually how you can solve their problems, and having just conversations. These are all things that Stefan's going to dive into and that we'll cover over the course of this webinar, and why good sales really is more than just having your elevator pitch and selling yourself. And why investment now too, you're not always going to get the sale right in the first conversation, but investment now can lead to a lot of buy-off later. And with that, I want to pass it off to Stefan, who is going to give an absolute masterclass on how to become a great salesperson. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Liv. I really appreciate it. As Liv mentioned earlier, my name is Stefan. I'm one of the account managers here at Spectora, and it's such a privilege to be with you all here today. So thank you for having me. And when we started looking at like what to build out content-wise for this webinar, I think a big thing that we noticed is, what is sales and what is the misconception of what sales is versus what it could be and what it could mean for your business, and that's relationship building. And so let's start there and see where it goes, right? So what is sales? So let's look at this definition. A transaction that includes an exchange of services or goods for a certain amount of money. I don't know about all of you, but that definition makes me feel like that person in the photo, right? It's cold, it's impersonal, like that's yucky. Nothing makes me feel good about that. And we're in a relationship-based industry. Like this is not how I personally want to approach sales. So let's think about it then. And we started thinking about it from the lens of truly how we at Spectora view sales and potentially how you all could view it as well. So this is our definition of sales, right? It's an opportunity to solve a potential customer's problem. So let's break that down, right? It's an opportunity. So that doesn't feel forced. That doesn't feel like you have to get it done. And you're solving someone else's problem. So you're in service to someone else. Like I can get behind that. Like I have a product and a service and I'm trying to help someone else. Like that sounds really good. You know how we do that? We do that through relationship building, which then leads to sales. So all of today, right, we're going to talk about a couple different frameworks, some approaches, some tactics, some qualities, some skills, all of that. It's going to be a lot of information. Really, the biggest thing for us all to take away from today is that mindset shift and that negative perception of what sales is or what we interpret it to be and what it really could be and what it could mean for you and your business. Because let's think about it. Let's think about what all of you do, right? You really are doing something that's already solving some problems, right? For agents and clients. So let's think about this. For the agents utilize the inspection reports among all the other things that you provide during the real estate transaction. And arguably, that's a very important piece of that transaction. So you're solving that challenge. Clients, on the other hand, are about to make the biggest financial purchase of their life. They need information to help make that decision. You're providing services that solves both of those problems. Relationship building and sales is connecting the dots between the problem and the solution. All of you are already doing this, but hopefully now with this new approach and this framework and what you learned today, maybe it eases you into feeling a little bit better about how you approach doing it. So you can look at this a whole bunch of different ways, but here are some key qualities and some key skills that we have found to be really true and help when it comes to relationship building and selling. So number one is empathy or being empathetic, right? Really understanding the person that you're working with, understand what they're going through, and really understanding where they are, right? That empathy goes such a far way when it comes to relationship building and consultative sales, because it really feels like you're working with that individual. You have to be adaptable. Things are going to change constantly, especially in our industry over the last few years. And then the next three things I really think are important. And it's one of these other misconceptions when it comes to selling. There is no silver bullet, right? There is no one size fit all. And you have to be persistent. You have to be patient and you have to be resilient, right? These things are not going to happen overnight. Rejection's going to happen. Sometimes you can't see the forest through the trees, but if you stay with it, and it will eventually get there, I promise you. And the last thing is confidence, which Liv spoke about a little bit before. For me personally, I've been here at Spectora a little over 2 years now, and I see the value that we're bringing to the home inspection industry and homeowners and inspectors. So when I talk about Spectora and the platform, I speak with a lot of confidence. Well, that same conviction is how you all need to speak about your organization and the services that you're providing. Because if you don't truly believe it yourself, the person on the other side is not going to believe it either. So just some skills that we're going to talk about a little bit today. We're going to talk a lot about active listening and how important that is. Communication, and that spans your verbal communication, making sure that you can articulate really well. And then, something that a lot of folks don't think about is your nonverbal communication, your body language, your presence. A lot of times that says more than what you're actually saying and can tell a whole different story. So making sure you're very mindful of that. And then finally, your written communication and making sure that that's clear, that's concise, and it's in your organization's brand and language. Problem solving, right? We're going to talk about that today, connecting those dots. Relationship building, we're going to spend some time on that. And these last two skills, I think, are ones that folks don't think about enough when it comes to relationship building or selling. And that's time management and organization, right? You have to put in the effort. So are you carving out time every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every year to put forth these efforts? And then how organized are you? The best folks at relationship building and selling aren't throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. They're coming from it from a very systematic framework, methodical approach. And so I think those are two skills that when you look at this, that, hey, I really need to focus on that because it's going to make me better at relationship building and selling. So how do you approach sales? The reality is everyone sells differently. But here are some of the things that we have found to be best practices when we work with companies such as yourself. Being genuine and authentic, right? If you're showing up and you're actually trying to help solve that potential customer's problem, and you're not just trying to get the quick sell or win them over, like that comes across. And that comes back to that empathy and that consultative selling. Ask really, really good questions. We're going to talk a lot about this today, but the better you get at asking questions, the better you're going to get at relationship building and selling. Listen more than you talk, right? There's a reason that we have 2 ears versus 1 mouth, because you're really trying to listen to that individual that you're working with to uncover problems, whether they're perceived or real, right? Because your job is to uncover those problems and then find the solutions with which your organization can provide, right? And so no matter how you approach sales, a key piece of it all is your ability to build relationships with the people on the other side. So let's talk about that, right? Relationship building is such a key part of all of this. I think one of the things that we often forget is it takes time to build long-lasting relationships. It doesn't happen overnight. So what are some things that we can all practice daily to get better at building relationships? And it's one of those things where, you might see someone or work with someone, and you're like, oh, you know what? It just seems so easy for Stefan to build relationships with people. He just inherently can do it. Maybe, right? But the truth is building relationships is a skill that anyone can learn with practice. So what do we want to focus on? You want to focus on that effective communication, right? Verbally, non-verbally, your written communication. You want to practice that and make sure that's really buttoned up. You want to work on building relationships daily. And you read that correctly. You want to work on them daily. That doesn't mean you're working on the same relationship daily, but you're putting into practice of like, how can I build better relationships every single day? Focus on becoming more emotionally intelligent. That ties all back to the empathy piece. Understanding who you're working with, where they're at, meeting them where they are, because what you want to do is get to know these individuals on a personal level. Yes, you're here to sell your business and sell your products and your service, but the common thread out of all of that is we're all human beings and this human connection. So if you get to know them on a personal level, well, then you can remember things that are important to them. A perfect example is think about a time when you worked with someone and you shared something with them that was really important to you. And then you didn't see them again for another few months. And then when they saw you again, they're like, hey, Stefan, last time that we spoke, you tell me that you were going out and getting your certification, your credentialing in this. Well, how's that gone? What does that mean for your business? And it's like, oh, wow, they remembered that about me. Like, that's incredible. Like that's what you can't see when it comes to relationship building and how important it is. All right. So let's think about an approach to a relationship, a tactic or a framework, that shift that you can take to relationship building. And let's use the scenario of, let's say you're going to a real estate agent networking event, right? So you're there. Think about this approach. Step number one, you have to break the silence, right? You have to put yourself in a vulnerable position. You're going to probably feel uncomfortable, but you have to go and break that silence because they don't have to come and say hello to you, right? And when you break that silence, you might get accepted, you might get rejected. You don't know, but you don't know unless you go and try. And the whole goal of that is you want to take that interaction and you want to turn that high into high again. So did you get their phone number? Did you get their social media handles? Did you get their website? Like, how are you creating an opportunity to take that initial interaction and turn it into a second interaction? And then that second interaction turns into step three. How do you turn that high again into let's chat? So you're starting to get a little depth. You're starting to get to know them a little bit. And then step four, let's turn let's chat to let's build a relationship. Or in this case, let's build a partnership. You know, our business values align. We think we would be a good fit. We could benefit our community, right? So it's a step-by-step process. It just doesn't happen one and done, right? So it could take you years and years to build a relationship based on trust and respect. Don't rush it. All right, so this was something that was taught to me early on in my career, not necessarily for relationship building and sales, but just how to interact with others. And I think it's a really good approach. All of you can mentally, do this exercise when you're working with others. So typically, when you're working with someone else, you're sitting across the table from them, right? There's a barrier and you're across from them. Your goal is, how can I get to the other side of the table? How can I sit on the same side of the table as them, head down, elbow to elbow, talking, collaborating, partnering, and solving problems together, right? That's how you build relationships. And in this case, those relationships will equal more sales with your agents and clients. So visually, how can you think about, I'm on this side of the table, how can I get to the other side of the table and work with that individual? That's all of our jobs. So we went over a few key skills, qualities, some approaches, some visual exercises that we can take. Well, let's talk a little bit about some truths and lies about sales. Lie. The best salespeople talk a lot. They don't. They listen extremely well. Truth. You need to ask the right questions to effectively sell. 100%. The better you get at asking questions, the better you will get at relationship building and selling. Lie. Every agent or client will not be a good fit for your business, and that's okay. One of the things that we observe are, companies that are trying to get every client or every agent and win them over. That's not going to happen. And it might be because your business philosophies don't align. It's not the right timing. But the sooner you can learn that, the better, because then you can put your time and effort and energy into building another relationship. And it doesn't mean that that relationship can't come back around or turn around in the future, but you just have to be able to observe that and know how to work through that. Truth, you need to be in front of individuals when they are ready to buy. Yes. How many pieces of content over the years have we put out about being top of mind for agents or clients, right? We talk about it all the time. You don't want to be in front of someone when you're ready to sell. You want to be in front of them when they're ready to buy. So how are you engaging with them? How are you keeping them up to date on your company and what you're providing and what you're doing in the community, right? Because then when they're ready to work with you, hey, guess who they're thinking about? They're thinking about the company that's stay top of mind. Lie. Humans don't always share what they really are thinking, right? We don't. So that's why the importance of asking questions and digging deep is so important to really get at those real or perceived problems. And then truth, price and value do go hand in hand when selling. And, thinking about your experience that you're providing your clients and agents, how are you providing that 11-star experience? Like, how are you adding more and more value to every interaction or the overall transaction? And, when you think about it, sometimes when you pay more, you get more. So how are you creating those experiences for the people that you work with? All right, so let's just look at a couple frameworks that you can start to implement in your companies today to help with relationship building and selling. Because if you don't have a framework, what are you doing? Just throwing it at the wall and hoping it sticks? Like, that's not what we want you to do. We want you to be successful. So first of all, you need to know your goals and your targets, and you want to be flexible. It's going to change over time. And today we're going to talk about building out a framework for outreach, specifically agent outreach, and then building a framework for your interactions. So I will say, I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes or the light version of a framework for agent outreach. If you have not watched, go back and watch our webinar, Agent Prospecting Techniques for 2022. Kevin does a fantastic job from from the methodology to the resources and going really in depth on how you can do this. So go check out that resource. But at a very high level, what could this mean for your organization, right? So we really focus on the SEC 3-pack when it's outreach for agents. And that's how are you engaging with them over social media, through email, and calling. But before all of that, where are you going to prospect? Where are you going to find new agents to work with? Is that MLS? Is that Zillow? Is that social media? Is that personal connections? Wherever it might be, collect that information, put it in a spreadsheet, right? In the spreadsheet, you want to do a couple things. One, build out templates for messaging, right? You want to have that clear, consistent message across your entire organization. You want to be organized, and from a time management perspective, you don't want to be building those every time you need to send out messaging. So build templates, build out a communication calendar. What is your cadence? How often are you sending it? That's going to really keep you organized. And then follow up, follow up, follow up. There's a graphic a few slides back that had the rule of 7 on it, right? Your brand impressions, you need to have 7 of them before someone considers buying from you. Well, the SEC 3-pack is only 3 touch points, right? So making sure that you follow up and you follow up and you follow up, and it all goes to that point of like, maybe that individual or that agent isn't ready to work with you right this second, but that doesn't mean that when you reach out to them in 2 months because you have it on a cadence so that you want to make sure that you follow up, that they just didn't have a bad experience with the home inspection company that they were working with. And guess what? You're top of mind, and now they're going to give you a chance to work with you. And then the second piece for framework, and this is probably something that a lot of folks don't think about with intentionality for their interactions. And have you figured out, do you have intended outcomes for each portion of the interaction? I know it sounds silly, but it's so impactful, right? So before the interaction, what planning and research are you doing? What information can you bring to the conversation to provide a connection point, to show that you're educated, to show that you're invested in building this relationship? Like, what can you do before? And then during, are you driving the conversation, right? It's one thing for you to have a conversation with someone about everything and nothing. It's an art form to be able to have intended outcomes and then drive that conversation to make sure that you get them, right? And so something that is a really good practice is build out a script of the most important bullet points that you want to cover, and then set the table at the beginning of the conversation. Today, I'm so glad that you took the time to meet with me. I really would like to learn these 3 things, and then you list them out. And then if the conversation starts to deviate, well, guess what? You can pull that conversation back in because you already explicitly shared, hey, I want to make sure that we cover these in our time today. And then afterwards, make sure that you document and you follow up. Personally, these are probably 2 pet peeves that I see in the world of relationship building and selling is if I have a really great interaction with someone and we share a lot of great knowledge between each other, and then the next time we meet, they ask me the same questions that I already answered. It's like, well, clearly you didn't do a good job of documenting that. Don't do that. And then the second one is if you say that you're going to follow up, make sure that you're always closing the loop and making sure that you are staying engaged with those individuals. That goes a really long way. All right, so we're going to look at two scenarios where you can take pieces of this framework and apply them to how you work with real estate agents and then clients. So this first one, let's look at how your next interaction with a real estate agent can go, right? Treat it like an interview. And one of the things I think people often forget, when you're interviewing for a job, you're interviewing the company just as much as they're interviewing you to make sure that they're a good fit. Well, that's what you need to be doing when you're trying to work with agents. You want to learn as much about them as you possibly can to see if they're a good fit to work with, making sure that your business values align and that what you are providing can actually solve the solution, or excuse me, solve the problems that they're trying to find solutions for. So even before you give the spiel about who you are and what you're doing and how much you've grown, ask them, what are you looking for in a home inspector? What could make your job easier and more efficient? What would make your client's experience better? What would add more value to your clients? What is your biggest challenge right now? What are your clients' biggest pain points? And if you go through all of this and you interview them, you're learning so much about them and what's important to them. Then you can connect the dots if you're a good fit to work together. All right, so let's flip that now. Let's look at, what some of this approach and framework could be applied to a client. And I do want to give a special shout out to Michael Cito from No Place Like Home Inspections. He and I went and got coffee a few months back, and we talked about life. We talked about business. He's really sharp. If you have not checked out his Spectora Spotlight podcast, it's episode number 123. Go check it out. And shout out to you, Michael. Really appreciate you. So Michael actually came from the restaurant industry. And so he took all of those learnings from being a restaurant owner into his home inspection company. And the way he described it to me was, for him, when he was an owner of a restaurant, he thought about every experience and every interaction that customer was going to have from the time that they walked into the door until they walked out. Was, how am I providing them exemplary customer service? And what is my team doing to get that menu ticket higher, right? Because when they order more food or drinks, the company's going to make more money, and then the server's going to make a bigger tip. And so it's like, you have your appetizers, you have your drinks, you have your entrees that pair really well with these side items. And you know how we wrap this all up? What about dessert? Right? And there's a lot of ways that the restaurant industry can do this, from, like, if you look at food menus and how things are built and bolted and how these things pair well together. He took all of those elements and really broke it down into 4 things that he applies to his home inspection company. And they are awareness. So are the people that I'm working with aware of everything that I'm offering? Am I educating them? Do they know why it's beneficial to have this or how it's helped others? And then how are you positioning those services by bundling them together, or the pricing structure? And so this restaurant approach, he has taken the home inspection industry, and that's how he was able to increase his revenue per inspection. And it's all because he was able to take these tactics of thinking like a restaurant owner and that experience that he's providing to raise that ticket price. And so you have a lot of control when you're interacting with others, right? Well, outside of your interactions, because you can't be all places, how can you shadow sell, which is selling when you're not present? And so here's some of the ways that you can sell when you aren't present. Do you have a modern website that is mobile friendly, that can easily be accessible and has an online scheduler? Do you have sample reports that really showcase the work that you and your organization do for others? Do you have social media accounts that are up to date, that has content going out? And then do you have really good reviews that you're interacting with, right? Whether you think about this or not, these are all brand impressions on people that you work with when you're not there. And typically what individuals do is, after you have an interaction, they're going to review all of these for your credibility. So you want to make sure that all of these are a great representation of your business. Woo! So we just went through a lot, right? We went through what sales is, what it could be, some approaches, some frameworks, all that. It should be easy, right? We should be able to get a whole bunch of relationships in sales. Well, guess what? Objections are going to happen. That's the reality, and anticipate that they will. Most of the time, what we have found is if you have objections of someone wanting to work with you or a service that you're providing, it really boils down to you haven't solved all of the problems yet. And what we have found is people tend to get happy ears. And so that's when you're working with someone and you hear a problem or like, oh, I have a solution for that. I can help them out. And you fixate on that one thing and you drown out everything else that they're saying. So that after you're done, you're feeling all confident, you feel good, like, oh, I can help you, I can solve this problem for you. And they're still like, no. And you're like, oh no, what happened? I'm solving your problem. It's because you didn't keep digging and still until you understood all of the pain points, right? It goes back to perception and reality. So you have to keep asking questions till you see the whole picture so that you can make sure that you're solving all of those problems. And one of my favorite quotes here is the biggest communication problem is we don't listen to understand, we listen to reply. Well, all of us, we need to listen to understand. We need to put our Sherlock Holmes hats on and making sure that we're listening so that we can understand fully how we can help serve the individuals that we work with. So let's use an example of like maybe a tactical way that you can overcome objections. And let's use the scenario of you're working with a new real estate agent, right? And you're trying to get to know them. So let's work on our active listening skills, repeating back what you hear, validating their concerns, asking for follow-up questions. It might look something like this. Hey, Tom, what I'm hearing you say is that you used to work with a home inspection company and they never really communicated with, being on time. And then they really struggled to get you reports and it really put your clients in a bind because they were on a timeline. And so they didn't have all the information to make that decision. And you've lost sales on that before. Like those clients walked away from you. Is that what you're sharing? I can understand why that's frustrating. You're trying to provide the best service possible for your client. Your client's stressed out. They're trying to make the biggest decision of their lives financially, and all they want is just as much information as possible to make that decision. Like, I can understand why that stresses you out and stresses them out. Well, let me ask you this. If you worked with a company that maybe over communicated at first, and we can kind of figure out what that looks like, but also, could get you reports published on site or the same day, or at the very latest within 24 hours. What would that mean for your business? What would that mean for the experience that you're trying to provide your client? What would that mean for your clients? I was just working with another realtor 2 towns over that was in a similar situation. And they are fortunately gave me an opportunity to work with them. And since then, I can tell you that we've been able to communicate with them effectively. And we've been able to get all of our reports published for that agent within 24 hours. And it's really helped their business out. And they've been able to grow with it and help their word of mouth. And so that's an example of where you can connect the value of what you're providing to the problem that you're solving. And hopefully, if you continue to do that and practice this, any objection that comes your way, you'll be able to handle. All right, some takeaways and some action steps, right? Some takeaways, anyone can sell. It doesn't have to feel yucky. You want to make sure that you're confident, you're genuine, and you're authentic. And you want to focus on building relationships. And you're focusing on building those relationships because you're connecting the dots between the problem and the solution that you're providing. Don't forget, this is not going to happen overnight. You have to be patient, you have to be persistent, and you have to be resilient. Action steps. Get started today. Build a framework for outreach. Build a framework for interactions. Write down 10 objections that you anticipate that you're going to face, and how would you respond to them? Figure out how you can shadow sell, which Liv's going to talk about here a little bit more in a second. And then complete the sales basic webinar 1-pager that we're going to share with you after today. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it back over to Liv. And thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate being here.
Yeah, so Stefan, if you don't mind just going to the next slide, but we're just going to talk about selling when you're not there. And as Stefan touched on, it's just so very important to have strong website presence, social media, and SEO. Because even though it might not be the super in-depth level you're able to get into when you're face to face with an agent or when you're face to face with a client or on the phone, your website, your social media, anything that's available on Google, anything that's available publicly should be telling the same story about your company. And that's really important, right? Because Stefan touched on like a realtor or a client is probably going to check this all out immediately after talking to you to see if you can really back up what you're saying to them in person. But there are also going to be people, and especially increasingly in the digital age, agents and clients who are going to find you via these channels, who are going to Google a home inspector, who are going to be scrolling through Instagram or TikTok or whatever social media channel you're on and come across your company that way, right? So that's all to say. We actually have other webinars that we'll link in our webinar resources we send out about what makes a great website, how to build up your content, what's important when it comes to SEO. But all of this is really important to be clearly stating your unique value propositions, to have pages that are like active and also look nice, like present your website should present you as a professional company so that, after you have a really great conversation with an agent you want to work with or anything like that, they go and they're immediately reassured because they're seeing the same thing on your website across your social media or just when they Google you, like in your Google business profile reviews, all of that, that they're seeing you are what you say you are. So that's a lot of selling when you're not there. And yeah, it's really important. So with that, I think we can move on to Q&A. Thank you again, Stefan, for this masterclass. We've got some good ones right off the bat. And the one I want to start with is, how do you answer a realtor that asks you if you are a deal killer? And Stefan, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this. I have thoughts too, but why don't you go first?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to hear your take, Liv. But the thing that immediately jumps out to me is asking the question of like, well, what's your experience been? What has killed deals for you? What are those things that you've worked with other home inspectors or companies that made a bad experience, right? I think that's an opportunity for you to really get into the brain of the person that you're working with. And then once again, it goes back to like, okay, this is the problem that they're facing. How can I solve it with what I'm trying to provide to you? So it's more of asking the questions to understand than just responding of like, I don't kill deals. That's how I would approach it to start.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fantastic, and I definitely agree. Something else that I've heard some inspectors talk about, and that I just think is a good rule of thumb, is when you hear an agent calling you a deal killer, focus on how you communicate defects in your reports. Don't say, no, I'm never going to label something as severe. Because obviously, as a home inspector, your number one duty is to the client, to getting that home inspected thoroughly. And sometimes there are going to be deals that you kill, but instead, focus on how you make the client realize what actually is a big deal and what might look scary, but how you can almost talk them down from that, walk them through the resources they'll need to fix it, and yeah, just emphasize that, in my home inspection report, and if you take time after with the client to talk through the report too, that's a great thing to highlight there. Just anything you can tell a realtor to assure them that, hey, you're not just going to go through and, make a checklist of everything that's wrong. That's not what a home inspection is, right? That's part of it, but it's much more, and you as the home inspector can provide much more value. Great. Next question that I saw is cold calls. Do they work? This is an interesting one. What are your thoughts there, Stefan?
Like as you mentioned before, we're getting more and more into like the digital age. And so like folks are like finding you like on those platforms that maybe aren't available. But you know what? The truth is there's still a lot of people that like to talk on the phone. And right, it's not necessarily all about just the phone call itself. It's the persistence and it's the variability in the medium in which you're trying to engage with that individual, right? So like, let's take a look at that SEC 3-pack, for example. Let's say you met someone at the business networking event. You got their social media account. So you started following them and you started commenting on things. And then you sent an email referencing something from one of their social media posts, and then you give them a call, you already have so many touch points that if they pick up the phone, you have something to talk about, and talk with them with. And so I just think, and especially when it gets down to like, you're going to have to follow up with them 3 to 5 times afterwards. You're going to have to get very comfortable with picking up the phone and calling them, after the fact, and they might not pick up. You might leave a bunch of voicemails, but it's all about trying to connect that engagement point. So still in today, I think the cold calling works, and you just never know when you're going to catch someone, right? What you want to do is create opportunities for yourself. And you can't create opportunities for yourself unless you reach out.
Yeah, I think Stefan nailed it, and that's perfect. And I'd say whether you're cold calling or whether you're just emailing, you find someone's realtor's email on social media or on Zillow. If you're doing that, you can't expect a 100% response rate. It's probably going to be a lot lower than that, and that's just a reality. But what you can do is make that personal. So when you're cold calling, open with a personal detail that shows that you've done their research, that shows that you're not just calling every realtor in your market, even if you are. You've taken the time to get to know this specific realtor, or like in one of the webinars we'll link that has to do with the SEC outreach plan and all of that. Kevin talks about how like you can put a detail in the subject line that you learn from like 2 minutes of research on the realtor that'll make them more likely to open a cold email. So like I think it's still a valid strategy. I hear from home inspectors that that's still a way to get business. There are just more avenues now, like social media, that can maybe have a higher contact rate potentially, but that doesn't mean it's not worth doing.
Yep.
Great. Okay. Another question we have. Ways of gathering more business and presenting value to an agent can be done through education, exchange of business, such as referral to a potential buyer or seller, promotional marketing of them through your social media. What are some other effective methods? Let me just read this again. What I'm hearing here is, how can you show value to an agent?
Oh,
That's a good one. Any thoughts on that, Stefan? Anything you've heard working for home inspectors?
yeah. Some of the companies that I have worked with so to give it a kind of frame of reference, most of the companies I work with are multi to enterprise level companies on the eastern side of the states. And it's been really fascinating to me that in the last few months, a lot of my conversations have gone back. A lot of companies are going back to the basics, right? And it's really just getting in front of them and understanding what the agent needs and what they're trying to provide, and then if they can meet it, right? And so I think it's leveraging that social proof as well, like showing how you've helped other businesses kind of get to their goals. And then also approaching it from like a collaborative standpoint, right? There's one thing to be said for, hey, if we work together, I'm going to make more money, right? It's another approach of like, hey, from a value standpoint, how can we work together so that our entire community benefits, right? The agents are benefiting from working with the clients, and then the clients are benefiting from working with you, the home inspector. And so I think it's really getting in there and figuring out how you can continue to show that value in the transaction, and then like really bring to light like how important like this education piece is, because there's so much stress on the homeowner at the time of purchase. Like I bought my first home 2.5 years ago, and it was one of the most stressful points of my life. Well, what can you do? And it's all in service of making that experience better for the agent and making that experience better for the client. And so, other ways that I've also heard companies share that they've been providing value is showing up to those conversations and really understanding what's going on in the macro of the real estate industry, but also what's going on in the areas that they're servicing, and like really working then with the real estate agent of like, hey, how can I help you so that you do well, right? Like, and approaching it from there. So I think it really comes back to that relationship building piece.
Yeah, that's excellent. I think that was the perfect answer, and I don't have anything to add to that except, yeah, do that. All right, what's the other questions we have here? How do you get in front of realtors when they don't go into the office? That's a great question, and that's honestly one of the benefits and the deficits simultaneously of living in the more digital work from homey age is if you can't be in front of them in person, there's so many other options you can reach out to. So something that we like doing is if you just go to Google and type in Google real estate agents, whatever your market is. So I could Google real estate agents Boston, and you'll get this whole list of real estate agents that are maybe paying for listings on Zillow or just listed on Zillow based on their reviews. And if you go there, you'll see all of this great information, like for example, their LinkedIn sometimes, their email address, all of that. And that's when you reach out to them via email or something you can do just online. And I know it feels more impersonal and you're not going to have that guaranteed contact you get from going to the office, but like, think about it. You're going to be making a brand impression. Agents check their emails every day, especially in the case that they're paying for a listing on Zillow. You
Mhm.
know, they're paying attention to what's coming in. And if you include like found you on Zillow in that subject line, they're probably going to see that email and open that email. So I think that's a good answer. The other one is social media. And like I said, um, Sarah Wilson's strategy of literally just reaching out to agents on social media, asking them about how their business has been, asking them questions about their job as agents, about what they do in the real estate industry, responding to any interesting things they post. That's such a great way of reaching agents who aren't going into the office, who you can't get to face right away. Do you have anything to add to that, Stefan, or is that about
No,
it?
I think you touched on it, but I do think another avenue that I haven't talked with a lot of companies that have gone this path, but like, from a professional standpoint, LinkedIn's great for finding especially bigger real estate agencies or brokerages. And so I would spend some time on there and maybe have a presence for your company on there. It's still one of those things that I don't see that a lot in our space, in our industry. And I would love for us to go that direction because I think to me, it all gets back to trying to create an opportunity for yourself. And that's another avenue that I just don't see too many people taking advantage of.
Yeah, that is such a great point. And this, bridges the gap between marketing and sales. Like, how do you even find these agents? Be where they are. So you can't expect them to meet you where you are. And so I don't know about y'all, but I see like all over LinkedIn and TikTok, agents are everywhere. They're posting, they have huge channels and followings, and they're really active. So if you can go ahead and find where they're active and meet them there, that's such a good point. Thanks for bringing that up, Stefan.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. We have a question. What's your opinion about hiring a realtor to advertise? If positive, how to do it? I don't know if I quite understand what's being asked here. Do you, Stefan?
Could you read it one more time?
What's your opinion about hiring a realtor to advertise? If positive, how do you do it?
Hmm.
So
I'm
like,
not, yeah, I'm not sure the exact intent, but if you're thinking in the lines of, let's just step back, right? And are you thinking about like a growth coordinator that's going to go out and represent your organization and try and drum up business, right? I have worked with companies that have hired realtors because they know the pain points. They have great connections. They are able to speak the language. They know the industry. They can speak to that and they know and they're going to learn about your business and what you're providing. So if you mean it, if this question's intended from the lens of like, would a realtor be a good asset to an organization to help? Yes, but I'm not quite sure if that's like the intent of the question.
yeah, and feel free to correct us if we're getting this question wrong. But I think that's a great point. Like if you're talking about hiring an agent on to work with you to help you promote your business, to potentially take on a role that you don't feel like anyone else can do at your company, or that you specifically want an agent in that growth coordinator role, we've definitely heard of people doing that and having success. The other thing I would say that's definitely going to be cheaper than this, and I mean less, you'll get less for it, but asking the agents you work with if they'll provide you testimonials, so long as you have a good relationship with them and you've helped them, that's huge. If you just ask them and say, hey, I've worked with you for however long you've worked with them. I feel like I've been really able to help your business and you've shared with me XYZ positive things about working with my inspection company. Would you mind writing or recording a short little testimonial that I can share to other agents so I can help more agents like I'm helping you? And even just doing that, like the social proof of having someone in their position, like hearing the validation about your company from another agent will be huge. So I'd say, like, if you're, depending on what your budget is, what your growth strategy is, all of that, that's another option you can explore too, that I actually don't see a lot of home inspectors do, but I think that's something that home inspectors should do.
I love
All
that.
right.
It's all about like you want to create fans, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you do. And I think that a lot of you as home inspectors probably have agents that feel really, really strongly and positively about working with you and would probably be willing to do that. All right. Another one. Let's see. How can I use Spectora to prospect by top accounts for the last year? It's from an anonymous attendee, a little bit of clarification about what exactly you mean by that. With our advanced plan, we do have like auto tagging for your agents. So if you have agents that are already in your network, and they are bringing in like the most inspections for you in the last year, you can have them auto tagged as like a top producing agent and be able to do specified outreach then. If I'm misunderstanding this question, please just let me know. Stefan, do you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, I was going to say if that's the intent of the question, I've seen a lot of companies put those tags in place and have hyper personalized communication efforts to those agents, whether that's through actions, mass emailing, or running a report. And I worked with a company that shared that their top producing agents that they work with at the end of the year, they send them a thank you and like a gift basket, things like that. And all of that data you can pull out of Spectora with Spectora Advanced and really hone in on those agents or those companies that you work with.
Yeah, great answer. And yeah, chat in again if we misunderstood that, but hope that helps. Okay, I see one more question in here, and it's one I like and think is a great thing to talk about here. It's from Matthew. He's saying, I've seen a lot of chat GPT usage. What are your views on that AI direction? And I'm going to give the AI answer that I always give, which is it is an incredibly powerful and useful tool, and it is becoming even more so. I think they're using like learning tools like ChatGPT, like Google's Gemini or Bard to make you more productive is definitely not going to hurt you right now. That said, hugest caveat in the world, if I don't know exactly how you've seen people using this, but if you're using it to pull a list of agents, I would say don't trust that information, because the amount of times that I've used ChatGPT or Google's Bard, which is their ChatGPT-esque tool, to search information, and I have gotten something that is wrong or just outdated and inaccurate, it's a pretty high rate. So if you're just, using it like you would use Google to find agents, I would say just always double check, make sure you're actually getting a correct email. And that, that we don't need to get too deep into AI and its hallucinations here, but it's not always accurate and it's important to check. That said, if you could feed it information that you have, you could probably get it to build out some sort of outreach plan for you, some sort of spreadsheet, customize that. If you can use it as a tool for productivity, that's awesome. And like, there's definitely a future of AI in our industry, whether that's home inspectors using it to be more productive with their blog posts, with website content, whatever that is. We're seeing more and more inspectors use it. So our views on like that AI direction is that it's happening and we're interested. Yeah. All right, wonderful. I'm not seeing any more questions. So if you have them, write them in now. If not, though, thank you everyone so much for coming, for giving us your time today. It means a lot to us that you like to come here and learn with us. And we hope that you got something out of today. And we're really excited to see you all in 2024. Just go out there and crush it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.